Ice Cube's tour bus just went up in flames in Portland, but was it an accident or did Antifa target him? A rap legend rolls into Portland, and suddenly his bus is on fire. Coincidence or something darker? Portland's protests, Antifa clashes, and now Ice Cube's bus burning. Was this just chaos or a message? One summer night in Portland, Ice Cube's bus caught fire, and the rumors that followed were even hotter. So, did Antifa really torch Ice Cube's tour bus in Portland, or was it just bad timing? A rap legend rolls into town, and suddenly one of his buses is up in flames. The streets lit up with whispers. Was it political, personal, or just plain chaos? When the first reports dropped late that summer night, the headlines were wild: Ice Cube, bus fire, Antifa. Social feeds and YouTube commentators had a field day. Some swore it was deliberate. Others thought it was just another freak accident in a city already drowning in protests, tear gas, and burning dumpsters. The wildest theory? Maybe Antifa mistook Cube's bus for something else, something far more hated. Since his name includes ICE, rumors spread that activists thought his vehicle belonged to ICE, the federal immigration agency, and attacked it by mistake. The mix of celebrity, politics, and protest was gasoline on the rumor fire. But let's pull back and walk through what really happened. Ice Cube was in Portland for his Truth to Power tour when one of his buses suddenly went up in flames. Witnesses described the fire starting near the tire well, shooting dangerously close to the side windows. Firefighters rushed in, smashed a window, and killed the flames before the whole vehicle could be lost. Thankfully, no one was hurt. The damage was clear, but it wasn't catastrophic. Ice Cube's tour bus still stood tall in Portland, though the blackened streaks of smoke and the shattered glass told their own story. It looked like a survivor of an attack, scarred but not defeated. Fans and onlookers quickly shared photos online, turning the bus into a kind of symbol. But for Ice Cube himself, the situation was never about drama or conspiracy. He stepped forward calmly, refusing to feed speculation. In his words, this wasn't personal. Cube dismissed the idea that someone had targeted him specifically. Instead, he framed it as an act of recklessness, the kind of destruction that could have happened to any vehicle parked in that spot. Cowardly, he called it, because setting fire to an empty bus in the middle of the night said more about the attacker's fear than about courage or conviction. If anything, he implied, the act was random chaos, not a calculated strike. That reaction mattered. In a culture where every incident is spun into a headline or a political talking point, Ice Cube refused to play that game. He took the oxygen out of the rumor mill before it could spiral too far. Some fans praised his composure, saying it showed the difference between an artist chasing attention and one grounded in decades of experience. Cube had lived through controversy before: protests, boycotts, political scrutiny, and he wasn't about to let one bus fire derail his message. Still, the scars on the bus carried weight. For the crew who traveled with him, it was a reminder of vulnerability. Touring is already a demanding grind: tight schedules, long miles, and endless logistics. Adding the risk of vandalism or violence only deepens the pressure. For some, the sight of Cube's bus smoldering in Portland became more than just an isolated act. It represented the uneasy climate in which artists now perform, a world where political tension spills into everyday life, and where even a parked bus can become part of a larger cultural battlefield. Observers couldn't help but connect the dots. Portland, after all, was a city marked by months of protests and clashes between activists, police, and federal agents. To some, the bus fire fit right into that atmosphere of unrest. Whether it was Antifa, random vandals, or just bad luck, people saw what they wanted to see. The burned glass became a blank screen for projection, evidence of extremism to some, an accident to others. And yet, Ice Cube's response brought the focus back to music. He reminded fans why he was there in the first place, not for spectacle, but to perform. That night, he stepped on stage and gave the same energy he's been giving for decades, proving that neither fire nor rumor could silence his voice. The bus might have been damaged, but the show and the message rolled on unshaken. Authorities, however, weren't ready to give answers. The fire started at the wheel well, but was it mechanical failure, vandalism, or arson? No one could say for sure. The broken window added more fuel for speculation. Was it smashed by vandals or firefighters ventilating smoke? That uncertainty left plenty of room for theories, and theories spread fast. The most popular one: Antifa did it. Here's how that idea caught fire. Portland at the time was ground zero for nightly protests. Antifa activists had clashed repeatedly with federal agents outside the city's ICE facility, sometimes throwing fireworks, rocks, even trying to start fires. DHS accused them of publishing ICE officers' home addresses. Flyers urged protesters to show up masked, armed with protective gear, ready for chaos. Against that backdrop, seeing Ice Cube's bus in flames felt too convenient to be coincidence. Commentators online leaned into the narrative. Conservative voices like Anthony Brian Logan framed it bluntly. Did Antifa firebomb Ice Cube's tour bus, or was it just a coincidence? Some argued protesters might have mistaken it for a government vehicle. Others claimed Cube's occasional criticism of liberal politics could have made him a target. In truth, none of it was proven. Maybe it was vandalism. Maybe an engine fault. Maybe just an unlucky spark at the worst possible time. But in a city where masked protesters battled federal troops and graffiti screamed F*********, IC, the theory didn't sound entirely outlandish. And the timing couldn't have been worse. President Trump was in the middle of cracking down on Antifa, calling them domestic terrorists and sending federal forces into Portland. In that climate, the image of Ice Cube's bus burning in Portland, a city already symbolizing unrest, was too perfect to ignore. Coincidence or not, it became part of the larger story. To some, it was proof that Antifa's chaos had spun out of control. To others, it was just bad luck framed as politics. But in that moment, with America's culture wars raging, even a tour bus fire turned into a symbol of the battle over truth, power, and who gets to control the narrative. Commentators couldn't ignore the timing. Conservative voices like Anthony Brian Logan pointed out how strange it seemed. Cube's bus went up in flames the very same week Trump sent federal troops into Portland. To some, that wasn't just coincidence, it was proof of a city unraveling, a place where even visiting artists weren't safe from the fallout of political unrest. What made this moment stand out wasn't the fire itself, but how quickly it grew from a local incident into a national talking point. Strip away the rumors, and the facts are basic. A tire well caught fire. Firefighters put it out. No one got hurt. Cube himself brushed it off as nothing personal. But in today's media ecosystem, facts are only the starting point. A story with a name like Ice Cube attached is bound to get stretched, politicized, and spun in every direction. For Trump supporters and Antifa critics, the fire was proof of extremism run wild. For skeptics, the whole theory was laughable, a conspiracy built on coincidence. Meanwhile, the actual investigation by Portland Fire moved slowly and quietly in the background, drowned out by viral headlines and YouTube hot takes. Even the rumor itself, protesters mistaking a tour bus for an ICE vehicle, was both ridiculous and unsettling. Ridiculous because of the sheer unlikeliness, unsettling because it implied someone was reckless enough to torch any vehicle they thought belonged to the government. Through it all, Ice Cube played it cool. He refused to feed the frenzy, calling it the kind of cowardly act that could have happened to anyone's property. He left space for the possibility that it had nothing to do with him at all. That restraint mattered. By not confirming the speculation, Cube stopped the fire from being etched permanently into history as the night Antifa attacked Ice Cube. Racism, poverty, and systemic injustice. But Cube didn't stop with music. In the 90s and 2000s, he shifted into film, proving he could flex across genres: gritty drama, Boys and the Hood, cult comedy, Friday, and family-friendly blockbusters. Are we there yet? That range didn't just broaden his audience, it cemented him as a cultural fixture. By the time he rolled into Portland, Cube wasn't just a rapper on tour. He was an institution, a multi-generational figure. Older fans still knew every bar from the late 80s. Younger ones recognized him from Straight Outta Compton or family films. And Cube himself leaned into that cross-generational bridge, joking about kids quoting Friday without realizing he wrote it. Beyond albums and movies, Cube's fingerprints touched pop culture in ways most artists never achieve, his collaborations even influencing the creation of Grand Theft Auto: San Andreas, a video game that redefined storytelling about urban America. And maybe that's why the bus fire hit so hard. Not because of the flames, but because Cube's presence magnified everything around him. He's a rare artist who can be revolutionary, funny, family-friendly, and fearless all at once. He came to Portland to deliver truth to power. Instead, rumor tried to rewrite his story. But the truth is, Ice Cube's legacy had already burned itself into history, untouchable, undeniable, and far bigger than one night's fire. Ice Cube has never been the kind of artist you could pin to one lane. He built several for himself, music, film, cultural commentary, and drove them all with confidence. That's why for fans at his Portland show, the night wasn't defined by a bus fire outside. It was defined by the energy inside, Cube on stage, commanding the crowd with the same force he brought decades ago. His set blended classics with newer tracks, proving that while the sound may evolve, the message has always been steady, uncompromising truth to power. The irony of that night, though, is hard to ignore. Just blocks away, federal agents and Antifa protesters were clashing in the streets. As Cube rapped about injustice and systemic failure, Portland itself was living those very themes in real time. His art and the city's turmoil seemed to mirror one another, blurring the line between performance and reality. That's part of why the bus fire mattered so much. For most artists, it would have been little more than a headache, an unfortunate accident, or act of vandalism. For Cube, it became a cultural Rorschach test. Some saw it as proof of Antifa's recklessness. Others dismissed it as an unlucky mishap. Either way, the story stuck because Cube himself is symbolic. To many, he represents fearless truth-telling. To others, Black excellence rising from the margins into the mainstream. And to still others, a reminder that hip-hop, once dismissed as dangerous, is now one of America's most powerful exports. Portland, with its contradictions, was the perfect stage for all of this. A city celebrated for its progressive ideals, yet consumed by nightly unrest, debates about police violence, and accusations of extremism from both sides. Cube's presence reminded everyone that these weren't just Portland struggles. They were America's struggles. His music has always placed local conflict in a broader national frame. In that light, even his burning bus became a metaphor. No matter how high you rise, you can still get caught in the flames of the country's unresolved battles. This is also where the story of one bus fire collides with the bigger narrative of Antifa in America. To understand why the rumor carried so much weight, you have to step back and look at what Antifa is, how it has been portrayed, and why its name has become such a political lightning rod. President Donald Trump seized on Antifa as the perfect villain during his term. He painted them as violent extremists bent on tearing down law and order. On September 17, 2020, he went further than any president before him, declaring Antifa a major terrorist organization. On his Truth Social platform, Trump wrote, "I am pleased to inform our many USA patriots that I am designating Antifa, a sick, dangerous, radical left disaster, as a major terrorist organization. I will also be strongly recommending that those funding Antifa be thoroughly investigated in accordance with the highest legal standards and practices." This was unprecedented. Terrorist designations had always been reserved for foreign groups like Al-Qaeda or ISIS. Applying that label to a loose domestic movement with no leaders, no membership lists, no headquarters, raised serious constitutional questions. Legal scholars warned it could collide with the First Amendment, potentially criminalizing dissent. Critics pointed out that Antifa isn't an organization at all. It's an ideology, a banner under which different activists operate. Still, Trump's framing stuck. To his supporters, Antifa became not just an opponent, but an existential threat. Suddenly, every incident of unrest, from smashed windows to Cube's bus fire, could be read as part of a shadowy conspiracy of radical leftists. And in Portland, the stage was already set. The city had become a hotspot for clashes between Antifa-aligned protesters and federal forces. Demonstrations over police brutality often turned into riots outside federal buildings. Agents reported being hit with rocks and fireworks. Protesters were accused of trying to set fire to an ICE facility while officers were inside. DHS statements described Portland as under siege, pointing to doxing of ICE officers and death threats against federal employees. Flyers circulated urging activists to squad up with masks, helmets, and what they called Portland energy. In that charged atmosphere, it wasn't hard for some to imagine someone mistaking Cube's tour bus for a government vehicle. Whether or not Antifa had anything to do with the fire, the symbolism fit neatly into Trump's narrative. This is what happens when you let radicals run wild. But what is Antifa really? To its supporters, it isn't an organization at all. It's a movement, a collection of activists committed to fighting fascism by any means necessary. That vagueness has always been its strength and its weakness. Without central leadership, it's hard to dismantle or infiltrate. But that same looseness makes it easy for opponents to paint it as a vast, menacing conspiracy. Find out who bankrolls it, he said. The idea of hidden money trails caught on quickly in conservative circles, even though investigations rarely turned up solid evidence. In reality, Former members said many Antifa chapters raised money through small donations or local events, not global conspiracies. Still, the myth of big backer stuck because it made Antifa sound like an organized insurgency instead of a loose movement. When Trump officially labeled Antifa a terrorist organization, it set off alarms. Unlike groups such as Al-Qaeda, Antifa has no central leadership, no membership lists, and no headquarters. Declaring them terrorists risked criminalizing an ideology instead of a group. Legal experts warned it could set a precedent. If one president could brand Antifa terrorists, what stopped another from targeting climate activists, racial justice groups, or even religious movements? Critics saw it as a direct threat to free speech. But Trump's allies dismissed those worries, insisting that violence put Antifa beyond the shield of the First Amendment. The bigger question became, where does protest end, and where does terrorism begin? For Trump, the line was clear: if Antifa was involved, it was terrorism, period. Part of Antifa's strategy comes from an old anarchist idea called propaganda by the deed. The logic is simple. Small acts of violence send big political messages. Breaking a window, throwing a brick, or setting a fire isn't just about the damage, it's about showing resistance is possible, sparking courage in others. That explains why their actions often look theatrical. They're not trying to overthrow the government directly, they're trying to keep rebellion alive. But this is also why they're so easy to paint as terrorists. If violence is the message, critics say, then Antifa itself becomes synonymous with chaos. The fire on Ice Cube's bus in Portland, whether accidental or intentional, fit neatly into this narrative. To Trump supporters, it was proof of Antifa's recklessness. To others, it was an example of how quickly a rumor could be weaponized. The reality of what actually caused the fire mattered less than the story it generated. Antifa's worldview also sets it apart. They look up to revolutionary icons like Che Guevara or the Zapatistas, not mainstream Democrats. In fact, some members mocked Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's Green New Deal as too soft and too tied to capitalism. Their enemies list is even broader: Republicans, Democrats, police officers, ICE agents, basically anyone defending the American system. To them, capitalism and fascism are two sides of the same coin. This radical outlook fuels cycles of street violence. Right-wing groups like the Proud Boys or the Boogaloo Boys see themselves as Antifa's direct opponents. When the two collide, violence escalates. Each clash becomes fuel for the next, a back-and-forth that draws in new recruits and deepens hatred on both sides. As one former Antifa activist, Gabriel Nadals, warned, when Proud Boys beat up Antifa, Antifa doesn't disappear. They go home, recruit more people, and the cycle repeats. Through this lens, the Portland bus fire wasn't just about one night or one artist. It became part of a bigger story about America's divisions, about how symbols often matter more than facts. Just as Antifa uses dramatic acts to send messages, politicians and media figures use events like the bus fire to stoke fear or rally support. In the end, that's why the incident stuck in people's minds. The truth about who or what started the fire may never be clear. But its symbolism, chaos, struggle, rebellion, was powerful enough to spread nationwide. In that sense, the bus fire itself became propaganda by the deed, whether or not Antifa ever touched it.